That was a wonderful introduction to what I'm actually going to be speaking about, and I think she may have stolen my thunder a bit, but I'll still try and live up to the expectations as best as I can. I'm here, my name is Girish, I'm the Chief Business Officer of Zozo Day. I'm not going to dive deep into a sales pitch, so hopefully I'll be able to, okay, that wasn't part of the plan. I'll still be able to give you a little bit of insight into what the changing psychology of money really is. Over yesterday and even today, we've seen how money itself has evolved and how it's changed, but that's not what I'm going to be spending a lot of time on. My topic really deals with how the consumers of money have really evolved along with the money itself, right? And to that note, essentially what's happening is that as money has gone from being something that was physical to being plastic to being digital and maybe getting even more evolved into crypto and NFT and so on, how are we as consumers of this money or people who use money really thinking about it, right? So a major aspect about the psychology of money has to do with the generational aspect or the socioeconomic aspect that is being brought about by a shift in the way different generations look at money today. And while we had this traditional mindset where it was a very private topic, like Rachel mentioned earlier, where we would it was almost taboo to talk about your money, right? Maybe the consumer side of things was a little more open because people could see what you were buying. You would buy a house, you would buy a car, you would be investing into things, and maybe there was a more visible aspect to the consumer element. But debt traditionally was very, very private, right? Nobody wanted to talk about, what kind of debt they had or what kind of challenges they were facing with debt. Over a period of time, we've seen that shift happen as, socially we've become, or rather as beings, we've become more social, right? And that's happened with the emergence of digital, with the emergence of the social networks, with us sharing practically every element of our lives. At one point in time, it was considered taboo to put your photograph up onto the internet. And yes, I'm part of that generation which has seen even that shift to a point in time when we are probably sharing every minute of our lives online, right? And this kind of shift in our behavior really is what is determining how we think about money and we work with it. If you look at today, the kind of discussions that are happening across the globe, whether it is student debt, which is a very, very public and hotly debated topic, the crushing levels of student debt, which this entire new generation is struggling to pay off, the kind of debt that they're incurring in trying to equip themselves with the right skills, is become a big topic for debate on social media today. And to a point where new communities are emerging, new conversations are starting out in very public places like the internet, on Instagram, on Facebook, on different platforms around, which are actually fomenting more sharing of information about how people are dealing with their money. Can anyone guess what's the total number of posts on Instagram, for example, that are currently trending with #debt-free life? Any guesses? 675,000. That's the number of posts on Instagram currently which are trending with #debt-free life. That's the number of people, or maybe a fraction of the number of people who are actually dealing with debt and willing to talk about it, right? People are publicly going on there and talking about what challenges they're facing. They're trying to find solutions. They want answers to what more they can do with their money so that they can lead better lives. This is what we are currently experiencing. And everyone in a dark room feeling bad about their money with everyone else in that same dark room. This was kind of, that kind of a moment where you suddenly realize, what's really happening at a generational level. And then when you flip the lights on, you see that there's something really transformative happening, which is social and fintech, which is about being more open about your conversations about money. And this is the second point that I really want to spend a little time on, which is that when we talk about money, there are multiple levels at which we are operating. There is the transactional level of the money, which we use to transact and make payments, maybe receive money, maybe move money from place A to place B. Then there's the emotional and the cognitive aspect of money, which is essentially how it impacts us as individuals, right? It's also about how do we see, do we feel happy about spending our money? Do we feel happy about the place that we are in with our money? A lot of this has to do with how, some of these social platforms are beginning to emerge and transform the way, fintechs are evolving as well. I want to share with you a few interesting examples that I found, and these could be a little new to some of the audience here, but then this is what's changing the world. Sophie is an example. It's of a company that is repricing student debt. But they don't talk about repricing student debt. What they're really talking about is that their target audience is what they call Henrys, which is high earning, not rich yet. Okay, so think about it. So that's an interesting audience or an interesting persona they've created. They've created a whole community of users who are high earning, who are willing to talk about their student loans, who are willing to disclose more about where they are, and this company steps in and helps them reprice their student debt so that they are able to wipe that debt off much faster. So interesting examples, and these examples abound across every domain, every space, not just in debt, but also in trading. I mean, we've seen of late more numerous examples of companies that are beginning to take up, are willing to publicize the kind of trades that maybe experts are doing, talking about the reasoning behind it. And one great example of that is Robinhood. Maybe a lot of you have heard about Robinhood and what went down last January, especially when they blocked trades on GameStop. What really happened was the minute Robinhood came up and blocked trades on GameStop, there was this Reddit community called Wall Street Bets that took over. And they took over in a phenomenal way because there was a class action suit brought against Robinhood saying that they manipulated the trading on the GameStop counter, and they were stopping the trades or manipulating the trades because they had prior information from GameStop or from one of the investment banks. And what we saw really was, an upsurge in activity where communities got formed, retail investors who people would have you believe have no power when it comes to trading online were actually coming together to beat the investment banks at their own game, which was they actually they drove the price of GameStop up much further against the investment banks. This is a classic example of the retail investors and the consumers taking back the control from the large investment banks and the corporate houses. And this points really to a trend where a lot of the consumers are realizing that by talking more about about their money, talking about and openly chatting about what they believe needs to be understood about how their money can be transacted, how it can be grown, how their debt can be retired, is actually giving more power back to this community. And the same examples again abound for common stock, for public and others, which are all great examples of companies that are doing something innovative in this space, where you can actually follow trades that are being done either by one person, or you can understand what exactly are the new personal investment vehicles that you can invest into. And then as we look at the emotional and the cognitive aspect of money and we try and understand what's happening here, there's the hacker mindset. Now I know it's a tall order to walk about the hacker mindset and talk about this right after a cybersecurity session, but it's also the way the money is moving. I mean, people are thinking about hacking into their money. It's the way people were talking about hacking into technology and software as well. And this is really the example, so that is the example of the Reddit sub-community which has Wall Street Bets. Of course, like everything else social, it has a number of fake trades, a number of fake recommendations as well. So it's all the more crucial that users sift through the content and understand what exactly is happening there. But as we look at the transactional and the functional value of money, we're also beginning to realize its social and cognitive value. And this is where we ideally need to think about the different kinds of the change in the mindset that one needs to bring when we are dealing with our money. I want to show you a very quick cartoon. I'll pause here for a couple of minutes while you take that in. It's about the new form of money. So here you have this lady who's walked up to a store and she's actually trying to pay with her photos, right? And when he asks, are you going to pay, are you seriously expect to pay with Instagram photos? She's saying, no, just one photo, right? So this is a new form of currency that we are really talking about. We are really talking about a transformation that's coming about where people are beginning to think about money in very different ways. It's about assets they own. It's about the skills that they can monetize. It's about the capabilities that they possess. Today, we talk about fractional ownership of assets. There was a session in one of the other rooms where one of the speakers was talking about, how they are going to use blockchain to create fractional NFTs on real estate investments, right, which can then be owned by multiple people. There are multiple companies today who are talking about creating fractional ownership of different kinds of assets. A case of wine, perhaps, or maybe this exclusive painting that you have, or anything that you think could be applied to, that it could be applied to. It's a very interesting concept. It's a very different way of thinking about money. Maybe it will take another couple of years for it to mature and for it to actually get there. But this is what's really happening today in the space of money. And that's where I want to lead into with branded currency, because branded currency is your currency. It's what you own. It's what you make of it, and you sort of define the boundaries of what it can do for you and how this branded currency can be used. So this is my spot under the lights in terms of talking about Zozo Day. So this is what we do. Essentially, we help organizations create their own branded currency. One can think of it as points. You can think of it as something that you would use to give value back to your users. But it's essentially a form of fiat currency that you are creating to transact value, right? And yeah, there is branded currency for any dimension. It can be for customers, it can be for your employees, it can even be for your partners. So there are different dimensions to this that one can actually talk about. And I promised Rachel I would be giving her a few minutes back, so that's about all I have here. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this.
I got a mic, I can talk. I'm pretty loud, you can hear me without the microphone actually, but give him a round of applause again. Girish has been great. Thank you for waiting so patiently. He has a table outside, so you may pass him on your way in and out for coffee breaks and so forth, but you stopped early, so there may be some questions in the group. I'd like to hear from some new people that haven't yet asked a question. I'm moving to the back. This table likes to talk. Anyone over here would like a question? How we doing? You got a question? Nicola's back here. I don't know who. Everyone Nicola? I got to talk about Nicola after this for a second. He knows what to do on social. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I think your intervention, your speech was amazing, and you touched so many of the things that happened last year. My question is, in fact, I was part of that Wall Street Bets community, and I think it changed many, many things. However, just as you said, in order to avoid these singular psychology becoming mass psychology train wrecks, some education has got to do. How do you think about that's going to happen? Is that going to be centralized, decentralized? Are communities educating themselves? How is that going to happen in your opinion? Thank you again, which was a very, very meaningful speech. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nicola. So I think I know this is going to be a little contrary to what you heard earlier in the cybersecurity fireside chat. But I think the future is decentralized, in my opinion. I think it's the way the world is going to move. The checks and balances, the controls that we need in order to build far better scrutiny of what is legit and what is not really starts to rest with the platforms themselves rather than one centralized authority, right? So what we are probably going to see is a set of frameworks, a set of guidelines that are going to emerge. And I think Web 3.0 is probably leading us there with the kind of things that we will probably start to see in the next couple of years very quickly. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you. How about another question? Anybody? Anyone? Okay, well, I'm going to go right into it and say he is from XOXO Day, which is one of the sponsors today. You'll see their nice logo up in orange under the exhibitors. And I wanted you to talk about a little bit more about what you do with your business, because he just came up here, gave a great presentation about his value of knowledge as an industry expert, but you didn't even touch once about what your business does, which is very, very smart. Would you mind telling us a little bit more what you do?
Sure. So XOXO Day is a rewards and incentives company. Like I mentioned earlier, we deal with branded currency, which is essentially our way of saying that, any organization that wants to reward or incentivize its employees, its customers, its partners can use this branded currency to actually, show its, stakeholders that they really are appreciated. I was talking to someone outside a little while earlier, and we were chatting about, there's this very famous quote, I forget now who actually said it, but this is a conversation between a CEO and a CHRO, right? And it goes something like this. So the CHRO says, we have to train our people and we need to spend this money on training. And the CEOs, maybe legitimately so asking, but what if we train them and they all leave? And then the CHRO says, but what if we don't and they decide to stay? Right, so that's the kind of perspective that we try and enable as a company, as an organization, is that you really need to build a culture of appreciation for your employees, for your stakeholders, which is what we help or enable through our rewards and incentives platforms. What we are trying to do is simplify the automation, make it very simple to use depending on whichever app, whichever platform you're coming from, to be able to embed this rewards and incentives into it, and take away the entire grunt work associated with that. That's who we are as a company.
Fantastic. Well, give him a round of applause. Thank you, Girish.